going. So if you want to maybe introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm William Hignight, but it calls me Bill, and I'm the library director. And this is Bette Moss, and she is one of our book purchasers and a library volunteer. And this is her husband, Day, who is also a library volunteer, and he does our statistics, and he's also
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
and the current president of the library board. And the horse is a donation from Wells Fargo.
Commercial.
Commercial.
Commercial. Thank you, Wells Fargo.
In the early 2000s, probably 2002, maybe.
No, 2004. I was there. You weren't.
Well, I moved here in 03.
Yeah, 2004 in the summer, a group of us got together because there was no public library in Corona. And we felt that, especially for children and for people trying to raise children, it was really important to have free books available so they could read as much as they wanted. So we got together, and the initial request was, please give us $10, 10 books, and 10 hours of your time. And we collected a group of volunteers, and one of them was very involved in the museum that is in Corona. And she said, hey, we can move things out of a room for you. Well, we ended up using 2 rooms. And that way we'll have a place that, people already know. They can come. We can put the books there. So we seated the pants by hand, little pockets and little 3x5 index cards. We collected all our donation books and sorted them and processed them and opened the library during Corona days in 2004.
And then from that point, it was a hit. And the library picked up a number of volunteers to keep it open multiple days during the week. And the obvious appeal was tremendous. And we had more than just kids involved. We had adults coming to check out books, and it was amazing, actually. So then it was the name of the group that started the library was a 501c3, and it was called Friends. The Corona. Well, it was called Friends. Not with Friends. It was called the Corona Public
Lending Library.
That's correct. The Corona Lending
name,
Library.
And it was a 501c3. Was just a group of us, and we fought our way through the paperwork and actually got approved and so forth and so on. But we had no sources of outside funding.
Right. It was all.
And most of our materials, all of our materials were donations.
Right. There was no new purchased books unless somebody bought a book and read it and then donated it, which would happen. Right. And so then it was obvious that the need was great, and the facility was way undersized. And so we started looking at different options to have a true standalone library. So one of the original volunteers, innovators, bought a building on Main Street to house a library in, but then come to find out the cost of renovating and making it accessible and code compliant was tremendous and was not really something that was doable. And then plus, finding grants for a 501c3 library is very difficult, right? You're very limited in where you can get grants from, mostly from foundations and private companies, and it's hard to compete for those kinds of monies. And so the village then offered this space to be the library and offered to go seek funding to build the library, with the only caveat that it had to become a village-owned library, right? You can't use village money for private endeavors. And so that seemed to be the way that the group, Lending Library Group Board wanted to go.
The board voted. We voted to do that.
And so then, as I was the mayor at that time, so then I wrote the ordinance that established the library, and which has to be approved by the county, by the way. That's how it works in our state. And so we were able to accomplish that. And then I went, at the time, there was a lot of oil and gas money at the state level, so we were able to get you have capital outlay requests that you can put in every legislative session, right? And they're typically, depending on your size, I'm used to getting anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 every time, if there's money available to get, right? Because there's just not huge amounts of money. But at that time, it was during Governor Richardson's reign. There was a lot of oil and gas money, and I asked for $250,000 legislative appropriation to build this library. And our senator, which at the time was Rod Adair, and our representative in our district at the time was Tom Foley. They both signed the bill and sponsored our legislation for the capital outlay money. And as luck would have it, we were funded the full amount. And we also had $110,000 left over from a previous remodel. Typically, that kind of money lasts 4 to 5 years, and we were on the last year of being able to keep that money, so we pulled it all together. And this took about a year and a half to complete, right? And then of course, we asked, the language in the bill that we wrote was not accurate enough for us to be able to use money for furniture, because it just basically said construction, right? So we had to wait until the following legislative session to get that remaining money reauthorized for the
which they did.
Which they did, right? And because they weren't giving us any new money, which I think they appreciated, and then we were able to buy all of the furniture. And
so
then,
we had about a year to plan. We had a community group of about half were already committed volunteers, but we had other community members involved who sat down and worked. We had the main structure of this building. It was going to be a remodel rather than
a bowling alley.
Yeah, rather than ground up. So we knew the space they had to work with, and they were able to actually design the building, the space, design a little kitchen area for volunteers, design the ADA bathroom, figure out how we would separate different areas of the library. And they also were able to play with plans to get as many shelves in as possible, which they did without compromising our space or making lighting too difficult. And we were able to do that at the same time the mayor and the council were working on the financial aspects of it. So it all came together, and we moved into this building in time for Corona Days in July 2008.
Correct.
So 4 years from idea to an actual physical library that really looked like a library. We still were operating primarily with donations. But at that time, we then went into being a developing library with the state. We were able to meet the requirements for that. I think we had actually done that a year before.
Yes, that's correct.
I think we were actually officially a developing library when the village took us over. But we then were able to get some money from them. The group that had been the Corona Lending Library went through the paperwork to re-identify themselves as a new the same 501c3, but with the new title, Friends of the Corona Public Library. And they became our primary local fundraising group.
Incidentally, the state library people were extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, they shepherded us through this. They helped us work around. We've never had a library director who was a librarian. We've never had a member of staff who was an unofficial librarian. But they were able to work around us for those requirements we couldn't meet and help us prioritize the ones that we did need to meet.
Right. So in a short amount of time, at least from our perspective, we became recognized as a full-fledged
5 years later,
library.
We applied to be a full-service state library, which opened up additional government funding.
So
No, that was about 11 to 12.
2012. Yeah, 5 years after. Yeah, so it was like 7 to 12.
Something like that,
7
right.
to the dates may not be precisely accurate, but it was a 5-year period that we were a developing library, which as long as you can be a developing library,
Right.
then you either have to
Make the move up or
make
you're
the
off
move
of the
up
list.
or
Right.
you're off the books. We made the move up.
We are the smallest community in the state with a full service.
That is correct.
library.
We are the smallest population-sized community.
You know,
in the
it's not
state.
easy becoming a full-fledged library solely staffed by volunteers, because there are minimum hours that you have to be open that is required, and then of course there's collection requirements that we had to meet and so forth, and
requirements, collection
and so
requirements,
and the way that we keep our statistics had to be something the state had to recognize that as something they could input into their system,
right.
and
So we developed all the procedures we needed in order to be compliant. They've been very supportive. They do come and visit us every now and then, not very often. They just don't get here very often. We made several trips up to the state library. They were very helpful in the first couple years as our funding sources slowly grew, in giving us first crack at books that the bookmobile was getting rid of or that they were culling out of their collection. So they helped upgrade our collection even before we were able to go to a fully purchased collection, which we now do. All of our materials now are purchased rather than donated, unless people donate us classics, particularly regional classics.
Yes.
We did have a bookmobile, state bookmobile stopping here, and eventually they canceled that because
It
they
had to
felt that
stop.
we were.
Yeah.
Well, when we made the full-fledged
Yes,
status,
a
and they stopped the
communi- a
bookmobile.
community that has a
We
full
were supposed to
service
do that.
library doesn't, they don't have the resources to also send a bookmobile there. So, and that was a hard transition for some of our people who had very close ties with the bookmobile personnel, but it worked, and people understood, what was happening.
And we started a process, not really a program, but we have a process now where if somebody wants a book, they just have to request it in writing, and we'll buy them the book. I mean, our theory is that we have 11,000 or so items in our collection. We know not all of them have been read, right? But if somebody says, I want a book and I will read it, then we'll be happy to get you that book, because it's a for sure read. And so we try to do that, and we do that. And actually, quite a few people put in requests for items, but we have
About $700, $800 a year.
Yeah, it's about 1,000,
People
and our friends, that's one of the things they support, in addition to providing us each year with kind of a budget. This is, our friends will say, okay, we'll commit to $1,500 a quarter, plus the profits from our calendar sale. They do a Corona birthday calendar with pictures, which we can show you. We're actually very proud of it. And that the profit from that, they give immediately to the library. But they also collect money in other ways, and they will give us kind of, we'll give you a quarterly amount of so much.
or if we
But
have
we
a
can
program
go
they want
to
to
them
fund and ask, right?
and one of the things we did last year is say, could you give us some designated funds for patron requests? And they did very happily. And so we never ran out of money.
Matter of fact, it was actually pretty popular. So the following year we asked for more because we ran out,
and they doubled it.
And they more than had. They were more. Well, of course, that's what they exist for. So they were more than happy to provide that. So it's worked out really well. So from that perspective, we've been very fortunate. However, all of our funding sources are relatively volatile.
Yeah.
And so that is, we don't have a revenue, right? So our funding sources are basically based on other entities and people's generosity.
Other decisions,
right?
And other people's generosity.
And so
right.
The county is a perfect example. Some years we can get as much as 5,000 from them, and other years we get 1,500. It depends on how their budget is, and there's since 08 there's been good times and there's been bad times, and it's very volatile. But luckily, we never have to lay anybody off. That's really a good thing. Sometimes we have to buy less collection items and maybe provide a few less programs, but we've been very fortunate, and our library has been very popular, and we have been able to provide just about everything everybody has asked for, which is kind of neat, actually.
Do some strange programming occasionally. We've done Chautauqua type things. We had a lady come on do a very nice presentation on the origins of Grand Quivira as a park and a national thing. The Friends paid for the initial appearance of the Missoula Children's Theater, working with the school.
Yes.
It's not funded, but they provided that. We're working on a historical thing, getting a bunch of the old residents to sit down with hot chocolate and a tape recorder and an audience and do an oral history thing.
We're starting to do
That's
more
a really
programs
program.
with the museum, as it's become, the museum was very well taken care of by a few very dedicated volunteers who left for health reasons primarily. And for a couple years, it kind of languished. People tried to keep it open, but it was hard to get anything really going. Then one person decided, okay, there's some new people in town. They're always asking about the history of the place. And there were some new people who had ties here, but who had come back after retirement. And they got together, and we now have a very active group of people in the museum. And so the library and the museum are trying to coordinate programs together so that both of our resources, can be used for the community.
And then the library sponsors other events during the year. We have the free fishing day. The state has 2 free fishing days, so you can fish without a license, and the village owns a fishing pond that the state stocks. And so the first Saturday of June is the first free fishing day, and the library always sponsors a fishing contest with kids and adults, biggest, smallest fish every hour, buys prizes to give out, and then we cook hamburgers and hand them out for free to everybody, and we usually...
the grill master.
And then we have some musicians in town. We have a little band, and they play for entertainment and stuff. It's really kind of a cool thing. And then we have in the past, we didn't really do it this year. We've done Halloween concerts and Christmas concerts. We didn't really do that this year.
Halloween, trick or treat.
But
we do trick or treat stuff for Halloween for kids, and open the library on special occasions for those kind of events, which is really nice.
We sponsored the eclipse. We purchased glasses for every kid and teacher at the school, and had a get together over in the pond area so that everybody could come at one time and watch the eclipse when we were able to see it during the day. That was
We've had astrology classes here, and we've had archaeology classes here.
Astronomy, sorry, yes, not astrology. No, Bill.
We could. Read my palm.
Yeah, we could.
We could, right.
But astronomy classes.
2 of those, actually, we've had. Yeah. And we've had people come from out of town providing musical events and so forth. And
so we try to sponsor about 6 events a year. That's about as much as I mean, this is going to sound very strange, but it's about as much as we can fit into the Corona calendar. It's a small place, but it is very busy. And not only with events, particularly around the school and kids and state fair,
athletics
and things
those
like
kind
that.
Of things, right?
But ranchers have periods in their time, during the year where they simply are busy 2 weeks at a time. I mean, they're either testing for pregnancy or shipping or calving, and you cannot do anything during those times. No one can come. So we try to do about 6 different programs during the year sponsored by the library.
Do you guys offer?
Yes, we do. Usually. There have been a couple years where we could not get someone to organize it, but in general, we try to. And I
believe we still have the library's rock sign hanging over there.
Yeah, we do for this year. This year, one of our young
library board members coordinated and worked
it and sponsored it.
I think she might do it again because I think she really enjoyed it, and she's young, which is a really cool thing.
She's young. She has young kids, and she loves the library because they come and get books and all the time. And so I think she'll probably do it again. It wasn't too onerous. It's so much material that they send you. It's overwhelming, right? But we told her, just do whatever part of it you feel like doing. You don't have to do everything.
And then the state offers a voucher program to help you buy supplies, but we never partake of that because it's a little bit. It's not worth the effort for the little money you get to go through all the stuff. And we have money, we just use our own money and buy whatever. We just pretty much tell Hannah that she has a budget of whatever $400 or $500, and she only has probably maybe a dozen kids at the most. And so
leftovers prizes from that are going to the preschool kids.
Yeah, when they come
for story hour. So we try to partake of all those things, and that's one of the big ones. Summer reading program is something that the state library tries to push every year. They even have a full-time staff person that does youth services, and so
we should also comment on DVDs. It is no longer true, but for many years we were the only source of DVDs in a 80-mile radius.
When we started in 2004, this is long before people could stream or there was anything like that. We started with tapes. I mean, we started with VHS tapes, and it saved people driving 100 miles or more to get a movie.
Now you can get through one in mere 50 miles in Estancia.
But we still have a large population who primarily come to the library for movies, and that's fine.
Whatever gets them here, we're good with, and we buy all the new releases. So
we spend a good portion of our money. We don't not spend money on nonfiction and reference and things like that, but we have the luxury of being able to buy virtually every movie that's released, and so we do, and it's very, very nice even now because Corona lags a little bit. People here, they have Wi-Fi, especially in the village, since the village offers it for free. But not everybody can do streaming. Not everybody can pay the data rates for streaming. Those of us that live outside the Wi-Fi area, internet is basically expensive. So we still have a big clientele that comes for the movies.
Probably our biggest collection item mover is movies.
Mysteries.
DVDs and mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Mysteries are next.
We also get a fair number of audiobook people.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we have some cross-country truckers, about 4 of them, who swing by once every month or two, pick up a couple of audiobooks, and drop them off on their return trip.
Yeah.
So they're always overdue, but they always come back.
They come back.
Do you guys charge fines?
No, we have never charged fines.
We don't charge fines. We don't charge replacement costs.
No.
If you tell us you lost it or your dog ate it, fine. Some people replace them anyway. But
We found we started out, and because we were very new in the community, we certainly didn't want to come across as that kind of library, where you're afraid to touch a book on the shelf because if your kid dribbles a popsicle on it, oh my God. No, we didn't want to do that. We have gotten more careful about if people have overdue books, they can't take anything new out. And then for a while, we had almost no control on overdue books. And gradually, we have tightened things up as people got used to the library. So now you can't and we have limits. You can't take out 20 movies. I mean, you just can't do that. So we have some restrictions, but we've never charged fines. And I can't see any circumstance under which we would.
Yeah, I don't think that would not be something we would ever. At least in my perspective,
wouldn't be in favor of
there are a couple of people that have cars that have checked out stuff and not brought back that I have banned from checking stuff out because I will not let them until they show some kind of responsibility. Because we just can't keep spending hundreds of bucks on collection items and for them to take home and put in their collection.
It's so rare that we don't want to penalize the people. I mean, what do? You got a book due tomorrow and we're going to get 10 inches of snow on Friday.
Yeah, we don't know.
I mean, I'm sorry, that's silly.
Yeah.
We have people who come way too far away for that to be a viable possibility. 2,000 square miles.
2,094 to be exact.
That is our school district. We think about, I would say
at the most.
I would say 350 to 400.
I would say 350.
So let's say that there are more cows than coyotes and more coyotes than people.
Yeah, definitely.
So but it's a huge service area. But the school, you can get an idea from the school. The school district is 2,094 square miles, and our school has a little bit less than 80 K through 12 students. And so the typical property owner, landowner here is a rancher, and they have anywhere from probably the smallest ranch I think is like 6 sections of land, which is 3,600 acres, or the biggest one is 40 sections of land, which is 24,000 acres. So, so that's a big. That's 40 square miles. So. Well, it's had a big impact on all of our lives.
Yeah.
I mean,
There are a couple things that have happened. We had a high school student, who transferred from another school district out in California. And I call it a school district because I'm being polite. And he started coming here, and he was an avid reader and hadn't had much chance to read. And between reading and the people in the library staff helping him, and someone else, one of our other volunteers, helping him another couple days, he managed to learn how to do arithmetic, which, since he was a sophomore when he got here, made the big difference between graduating and not graduating.
Wow.
Yeah, a couple, again, when we see a real need and there's a good fit, there are people with the ability to tutor, to mentor, to, help young people. And the community is very supportive of that. We do get the kid who comes to live with their grandparents because their parents aren't capable of taking care of them. And the grandparents are always looking to improve the kids' chances of making something of themselves. And so we are able to tailor programs to them. The other thing, I think we had a big impact on our elderly population with large print books and with helping people apply. People can come to the library and I can help them fill out the paperwork, and they can apply for the Books for the Blind program for people who have macular degeneration or are just haven't had their cataract surgery yet. So we've helped that population by keeping them engaged with books. Our audiobooks are another place where I think that serves a very specific population. Travelers, people who travel, because we all travel 100 miles to go anywhere, but also people who can no longer see very well but are still interested in books. Our preschool populations, I think it's made a huge difference in our the children in the community.
We had one girl who moved here, and she was monolingual, Spanish only, and she was doing okay with the English, but she had a real problem understanding one particular story. And we eventually figured out that that's because she had never heard the story. It wasn't that she couldn't read the words. She had no idea what the story was about. So I ended up going to a different full-service library in Albuquerque and getting a Spanish language copy of The Three Bears. Because Goldilocks does not translate into Spanish.
No.
And once you knew what the story was, her reading interest up and her interest level way up. We've also had some of the Spanish-speaking adults who were amazed to find that we had Spanish language books.
Yes.
That they could read.
Yes. Because
that weren't just textbooks.
Yes, they're literate, but they are literate in Spanish. Even the ones who may speak English still may only really
So they
read
only come in maybe
Spanish
once
easily.
every 2 months. But I think one lady particularly was amazed that she can come in and get a book that she can read.
Yes, Sotomayor's biography, for one thing, was one of the. So I purchase nonfiction, children's, audios, and a few other miscellaneous categories, but Spanish language is one of them. And so those are things that I try to respond to. Current events, we have a lot of us here have come, the newcomers. I mean, I've been here 17 years, but I'm still a newcomer. But we've come from many far-flung places, and people here are very interested in current events, in history, and we can buy the books that they want to read, and then everyone can read them. We've had a book group here for years. We were able to have a book group that met once a month here of adults who would come up with a reading list and go through, read topical, book, current bestseller type books. That at the moment we don't have that because most of the couple people that really were the movers and shakers behind it, they're not here anymore.
Right.
Gene Hudson moved away. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if someone starts that up again.
Because it left a gap, and the gaps usually find a way to fill
Yeah.
themselves, and so I can
Right.
see that because she started it, and now there's a
Right.
gap, so I can see that filling in. One of the cool things I think happened through the library, the library assisted tremendously in, was we have a family that owns a restaurant in town, and they were not legal residents, and they were able to become citizens of the United States of America through resources that were provided by the library. And I think they're two sisters. I think that is awesome, actually. And now I'm trying to work on getting one of them to run for a council seat.
Oh, that would be
Who,
great.
Lydia?
No, Christina.
Christina.
Yeah.
Christina.
Yeah, because she has the right.
Mhm.
She has a better personality for
Yes,
that than
I was going to say
her
Nubia.
sister.
Yeah, right.
But they're both
But-
sweet people, and,
Right.
and they're an asset to the community, and
But
they really
yeah,
wanted to be a part of this, and so
Right.
they took the time and
Right.
came in here, and we have a lot of retired school teachers that volunteer in the library, and
Right.
they assisted them, and
Right.
to me that's a huge thing. I really thought that was pretty freaking awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that for our library, that we
the
were
other-
able to help with that.
One of the other things we've been able to do is provide a testing site.
Yes.
There are certain, like real estate, where you have to take an exam. You take it online, but you have to have it proctored.
Right.
We've been able to offer that when people need that. All kinds of things that they just have to go somewhere for otherwise.
So it's hard for us to just think and put together for you a picture of a really cool outcome that happened because of the library. There's incidents that we all remember that was
Right.
that made a mark on us as
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah.
But I will honestly say though that this library, since the first day it opened its doors, has made a huge impact on this little community, and continues to this day. It becomes kind of a social gathering place. And we have people that come in regularly just to get a book and then they'll spend an hour and a half visiting with you, right? So,
UPS leaves people's packages here.
right.
I couldn't get out to the Everett Ranch, so I'm going to leave the package here. Let her
right.
know. It's like, okay.
20 miles and 18 of it was mud.
I think you'll find this in rural settings.
A lot.
The communities are cohesive. They respond to the needs of the community. They're very proud of what they do with their own hands.
Right. We're very independent.
And that's why that's why the library is so loved, I think, because it was built by people. It wasn't just dropped in here by someone who thought a library would be a good thing for Corona to have. It was grown here.
Right. Over half the people who started it were people whose families had lived here forever.
Yeah, we had a big contingent of very dedicated volunteers. Patsy, Janine, Janelle, people who grew up here.
Margaret.
And so there was a good mix of newcomers who brought in some energy and some, let's put on a show.
Well, a different perspective is always a good thing. So
Right.
our community's become very eclectic because of the development that went on here in the early 2000s, which we all bought into, which is
Right.
why I'm here, why they're
Right.
here.
Right.
The developer came in and bought a ranch and made lots and developed it up, and we all came and built our houses, and then so consequently we have changed the social aspect of the community has changed because the population has become more eclectic, which has been really good for this
Right.
community. And I think if you look at the people that have lived here all their life generationally, they look at the change that has occurred because of people like us and other people that have moved in with a different perspective and a point of view has really enriched the community. And I think that the library has become a very good indication of how that has paid off for everybody's benefit.
Well, yeah, it's a living example
Mhm.
of how you do things together.
Right.
How you don't impose or correct. You
Or force your
force
attitude
your
or
attitudes
perspective
people,
on other people
but
because you came from a
you-
better place or whatever, right? There's that.
but you provide some initial energy that then kind of says, yeah, we can do this.
Mhm.
And we were very fortunate that the community was as open as it was, and it always has been. Uh,
So depending on the endowment, right? So then I got a email from Shell just a couple of days ago that said, he feels good about what's going on, but the original finance bill only has 5 million instead of the 50, which lowers the endowment from 45,000 to 4,500 or thereabouts per library. And our perspective is that any money would be a benefit. And so what we would do with that money was we would be able to expand the amount of money we invest in our collection. If it's a small amount, the 4,500 would certainly be useful, and it would help cover us through those years whenever the county is light or the village is light, and it would
be stable.
Right, and so that would be one of the cool things, because none of our money at this point is stable. Right.
They're very generous. They come through
Right.
every year,
Right.
but some year that isn't going to happen.
Right, so it's relatively volatile. So we have managed to save.
Anything that is guaranteed gives us breathing room.
And gives us the opportunity to plan more than just a year in advance.
Exactly.
And which would be a really cool thing for us to do, right? If we could say, well, let's put some programs for the next 2 to 5 years.
Right.
But we could do that now, but then whether we could fund it or not is a whole different. We've been very fortunate. Every year we've been open, we've had money, and we've been able to pretty much everything that we need. There's going to come a point in time when I'm assuming, and it's not unreasonable to expect, that the village is going to expect the library to be able to pay more of its own way. Well, so all the maintenance, the building costs, the heating and the cooling comes out of them. They're paying our internet now, which is of course I did that because until last March I was the mayor, so I got to make that decision. But they also pay all of our liability insurance, which is significant, and so there's probably about $5,000 to $10,000 worth of operating costs that the village is covering for the library right now that we don't even have to worry about, and we just use our money to buy books and pay for programs and replace computers and those kind of things. But it's very possible that there could come a point in time in the future where the village tells us we need to find a way to cover our share of the expenses, which is not unreasonable.
Right. Or if we had a more stable source of income, we could offer
that, which I would like to be able to do.
Which would be a return on their having faith in us. I mean, keep in mind that when they remodeled the building, when they bought the furniture, this was all on the basis of volunteers.
Right.
They didn't pay anybody. They didn't own anybody to make it work.
Right.
It was all on the basis of us saying, we will keep it going. We will be here for years. And they believed us. That's a huge trust investment. It would be nice to be able to repay that.
Yeah, we got reciprocated, right. And so I think that, and of course the library board would have to talk about that, and we'd give it to volunteers, and we would see, but I can't imagine anything that if we had a set amount of income every year, it would be a game changer for us.
Yeah.
And so, in a lot of different ways, and if we're talking about the 50 million endowment, which would give us, a year, then we could make the library even more stable by saying we could hire somebody that would say work 4 days a week and make sure that everything was done and organized and all the statistics were made and all the requirements to the state were follow through with, and then have somebody here that could be counted on to make sure that the library is open enough to meet the
25 hours a week.
Right. That would be a huge benefit. But even the small amount would be for us. That's huge, right? It's all about your perspective, and so another $4,500 a year that you can bet money on that you're going to get, that would be huge.
Like Bill says, it would be a game changer, and I think that's probably true, especially for the smallest little libraries that you're going to visit, the ones that really operate either as, just 501s or, that are so small. Of course.
And there's a large majority of small rural libraries that have facility issues. We are very fortunate that we have a really nice, new, maintained facility.
We don't have an old...
The roof doesn't usually
even the museum, for example. The museum can't be open this winter. It isn't that the village doesn't think the museum's a good thing to have. but it costs money.
It's too old a
The
building.
building is so old, it's going to be very difficult for them to do anything that will ever let it be open during the year.
When the library was still located in the museum, we, meaning about 8 male volunteers, most of whom were in their late 60s, moved cement blocks and cement down into the basement and built retaining walls to keep the sides of the building
Slumping.
from falling
They were slumping
in. It up.
Well, from that perspective, we're very fortunate
Yes.
that we have this facility. But
Right.
nonetheless, it requires maintenance and upkeep, and there's an expense there. And so having a set amount of money that would go to the library's use specifically would be a huge.
Especially if we didn't have to do juggling to make sure that we use the appropriate set of funds
Yes.
for
Yes.
operating
Yeah.
expenses and another set for capital and another
Yeah.
set.
Well, we have to be careful from
Well,
all of our sources
yeah.
that we do not use their money the wrong way.
People don't want their dollars put in this pot with their dollars, and unfortunately, when you buy a book, the book doesn't really care whose dollars were
Right,
spent to
right.
buy it. But I mean, reporting is one thing. That's fine. We have no problem with that, obviously. But keeping, where did the dollars come from, and then what were they spent on? That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It is a nightmare.
But the clerk helps us with that significantly, and the village has staff that does that work. But we have to also be cognizant because,
Yeah.
when we're doing the budget, and she's a book buyer, he's a book buyer, my wife is a book buyer. So the three of them, since the library has opened, have been our book purchasers, and so they're like professionals. They know. They're like they lick the books or something. They know every book that's in here. Right.
We're book
Right.
whisperers.
Yes. Right. But they do as good a job as anybody in a paid position in a big library that does that. But they all have their genre, and they're typically their genres. Except for Day but Day's a good sport though. He took romance for us because nobody else wanted it.
He reads romance.
Okay. Now, but he does a really good job with that, and we have a few people that look forward to those books. So obviously, the biggest genre is mystery thriller, and that might be the same everywhere. I think in some places science fiction is really big, and Day does that also. But in our little community, because of the population demographic, we're not really big in
No,
that.
Western.
Big science fiction readers, and one of them left.
Yeah.
Right, so-
Westerns are bigger than science
Westerns are
fiction.
really
Yes.
big now.
Yeah.
But our biggest genre is mystery
Mystery thriller.
And my wife buys those, but
buys those and
she does a great job, and she
Yes.
knows exactly. She spends a lot of time on her laptop at the house looking at, books, and she does a really. But so it works out really well. And it's funny how people have become good at something that they never did in a previous when they were working
children's
for a living.
books. I mean, I didn't even have any children of my own,
Right.
but I buy the children's books,
Right.
and
And
now
she does
I
a great
get a
job
lot
with
of
them.
recommendations from
Right.
people, from school teachers, and
Right.
mostly from kids. They tell me what they like and what they don't like.
Right.
Monsters and dragons, they're always at the top of the
But
list.
I come in and I help, and I cover shifts whenever I can. My wife has had a bunch of surgery the last year, knees and eyes, and the list just goes on. But so we've missed a lot of her shifts. But she'll come in and get a big order of book, and it'll take us a while to process all those books. And then when she's done, she's on the phone calling people that she knows is waiting for that book.
Right.
And then sure enough, they'll be breezing in here looking for their book, which is really kind of a cool thing, actually. So that's small town. You don't get that, which is why all of us like our new lives in our little community. We all came from they came from Houston, Texas, so they came from a different
And
planet.
Chicago.
In Chicago, right? And so,
Yeah, different planet.
yeah. But we have learned to really embrace this perspective, and it has been fulfilling for me. For my 12 years I spent as mayor and then in the library, it's been awesome for me. Very fulfilling. And I know for the same for them. We go out of our way to make sure we are here
Well,
to
sure.
do what we promised
I mean,
to do. Right.
people don't do things for years and years and years that aren't important to them.
Right.
And
So
we have many, not just us.
Right.
There are other volunteers who have been with us from day one. And
They weren't kidding about Christy coming from Alaska.
and they're
She
still
worked there
here.
6 months.
So it's been very enriching for everybody that's been involved, and even the users that come in and get books, they come in and visit, and it's just been, really a library is a good way to round out your perspective of the world, and even whenever you're sitting in the house and it's snowing outside, and I hate TV, but I get a book, and for me, having to move into, I mean, I was going to move here anyway because I moved here before the library happened, but this is better than a movie theater. This is perfect. This is, if I was going to say, if I'm going to move in the middle of nowhere, what would I want? I think I would pick this over a grocery store. Well, I know I would.
Well, yeah, good thing because we don't have a grocery store
Right.
right now. Although one is nascent. We have one incubating.
Yes, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that it
Yes,
actually
yes.
gives birth.
Gives
but
birth, right? Yeah, we have
but
one
he's spent a lot of
incubating.
money and time and effort, so I have no doubt that it will. But we live in a food desert, and all of us for the last, we had a grocery store when I first moved here, so but in the last 5 years it's been gone, and you figure out ways. I take my gigantic Arctic ice chest and go to Edgewood and buy a month's worth of stuff and come back, and then every time you go to the doctor or to the movie, you go by the store. It's just what we do. Right? Nobody goes to town other than Corona, a town like Roswell or Alamogordo or Albuquerque without stopping at a grocery store. I don't think anybody here has ever done that. Right?
Places on one trip.
Yeah. So, but you acclimatize, but I don't think we could survive without the library now.
No, I think it's
become a crucial part of the being that the village of Corona is.
Way too, you can hear them when they're talking to somebody about what they get.
The library always comes up.
Right.
Yeah. And we have people calling to volunteer from 25 miles away in different towns. And they don't come in and work a shift because my shifts are all full, but some of them are really good about covering
Jackie.
days. Jackie
comes
and
from Vaughn. Sue
Hightower
comes from Ancho.
We have we had for a while, not anymore, coming from Windmill Ranches.
Right.
And
well, Nancy is on hiatus right now because she's in cancer treatment.
Right. And then we have people coming from up north and between here and Willard that come and volunteer. So it's kind of a neat how it's evolved and become an integral part of what the community actually identifies itself as. But so when the library is part of your group identity, then it's a really good thing. Yeah.
One of the nice things, because it's one of the few areas where this is true, is we have a fairly large number of male volunteers.
Yes. We have almost as many men as women, really.
Bill, me, Paul, Ed,
Mark,
and David and Mark.
David. Yeah. And those are people that really volunteer. Yeah.
We have a very volunteer-driven community, though. We have volunteers that take care of the cemetery that the village owns. We have volunteers that take care of the park that the village owns. We have volunteers at the museum. Volunteers
volunteers at the school.
Probably if you looked at the population, at least half of the population is out there doing something volunteer-wise in the community, which is kind of a neat thing. But you only find that in small communities. Right. So anyway, we don't want to use up all your hard time space.
Do you have any more questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead. You can close it out. I just going to say I haven't met Shill personally. We've talked on the phone a number of times. Whenever he first started this about a little over a year ago, and he would call and we would visit it. He's a very interesting fella. And so tell him that I would like to meet him sometime.
Yes.
And he wants to come